Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about sharing your work and making money online without relying on social media. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and on this show, I share stories, strategies, and experiments for running a creative business with radical generosity and energetic sovereignty. If you are a new listener, please know that this show is paired with a free resource. It's called the Leaving Social Media Toolkit, and you can find it at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. It's there for you. It's got some great tools inside, and I hope that you'll go grab it today. Again, that's offthegrid.fun/toolkit, which is also linked in the show notes of every single episode of the show. And speaking of every single episode, this is episode number 150 of Off the Grid, which is really hard for me to believe. I cannot believe we are 150 episodes into this show. I am so thrilled, excited, and grateful that you're tuned in. And this milestone episode also kicks off a really exciting series that we will be doing for the rest of March. So today you have pressed play on an episode about AI sobriety, which includes a conversation with my friend and colleague, Mel Mitchell-Jackson. This episode kicks off an AI series on the podcast where over the next 2 weeks, I will be sharing multiple conversations as well as some thoughtful tools for how to think through your use of AI in your business. Now, I want to say up front that I have called myself an AI skeptic for the past year or so. And in this series, I am having conversations with people who have all decided not to use AI. So you're not really getting a well-rounded argument here. I wasn't really interested in talking to anyone who had fully embraced the use of AI in your business. If anything, you're really getting a few clear valences and different reasons people have decided to step back or away from AI in their work. With all of the people I'm talking to, they have used AI at different points in different ways, and then they chose to quit doing so. Much like I used to use social media and then chose to quit doing so. None of that is meant to be a commentary on if you, dear listener, are using AI. I truly believe that you have agency over the tools that you do or do not use in your business, and I want to empower you to make choices with intention. These conversations are meant to help with that, and I'll also be including a few shorter solo episodes so that you can start to think about how to write an AI policy for your business. There's also going to be an episode on books that I've read over the past year that have helped me shape my perspective on AI. So you might be able to look at those books, read a few, and strengthen your own thinking in different ways to clarify your own choices and convictions around AI. So I wanted to offer all of this as a disclaimer and a bit of an insistence up front. I believe that you get to make choices around the tools that you do or do not use, but at Off the Grid, we are AI skeptics, and this AI series is going to be full of conversations about why different creative business owners have chosen not to use AI. I'm pretty sure I can promise you that if you want podcast episodes about why people are using AI, basically every other tech and business podcast out there will offer this to you. I cannot tell you how many small business communities and service providers I have watched pivot to AI over the past 2 years. And you know what? All power to them. Not here to critique or judge it. It's just not what I'm doing at Off the Grid. As you'll hear me share over the course of this series, I spent 2025 deep in reflection, particularly on generative AI. I really wanted to pause. I wanted to learn. I wanted to move slowly because I love new technology. I love the internet. I really love embracing emerging tools. And I have now built a career around getting unduped from social media, right? I have now built a career on how to be a better critical thinker of the tech that I use in my work and my life. And so I literally took an entire year to sit with, to learn about, to witness what was happening in the AI space. And as I watched what different companies were doing, read many books about the tools themselves and the people who own them, and had so many behind the scenes conversations with my biz friends and peers, it became pretty clear to me that I personally did not want to use AI in my business. And so, as you'll hear me talk about with Mel in this episode, in 2025, I did use some AI tools. I did write a couple emails with ChatGPT. I did build a website with Claude. But in 2026, I am practicing full GPT sobriety. I've canceled those accounts. I'm not using them anymore. Nothing that you're experiencing on Off the Grid, be it the podcast, the website, the email list, none of that has been created or assisted in creation by AI tools. The one exception to that is that I do use AI transcription software, and then I pay a human being to clean those transcripts up so I can put them on the Off the Grid website. So this takes me to another insistence, which is that there is no purity in this conversation. As I often like to say, we're all on Jeff Bezos's internet. And if you are using the internet, your work is in some way touching AI. So the conversations in this series are all very nuanced, ways that we are grappling with that fact and trying to maintain and reclaim our agency in that process. The internet is changing beneath our feet or in the air. I don't know what the right metaphor is for that, but what are we willing to do and not do, to use and not use? So I suppose another way you could think about this series is that I am presenting a sort of politics of refusal for AI in conversation with some amazing voices. So today on the podcast, I am talking to Mel Mitchell-Jackson. Next week, you will hear me in conversation with Casey Zabala. I also am going to have a very special Clubhouse exclusive episode talking to my partner JJ about AI and their unexpected experience and perspective on it. And then if all goes well, I will also have Ayana Zaire Cotton on the podcast to talk about an essay that they recently wrote about AI shame and the erotics of AI, which was really, really powerful. All of that is to come in this series. And I wanted to make clear up front that if it's not for you, that's okay. Come back in April. I'm going to do a series about money, going to do a series about community-based business. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up on the podcast. But for these 2 weeks, we're talking about AI. We're feeling skeptical about all of its claims. We're considering the deeper impact of these tools and the companies that own them. And we're doing that from many different perspectives and lenses and identities, etc. So thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. I'm always so grateful that you're here. As always, you can head to the show notes to grab the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit. I will also be hosting a sort of AI AMA inside of the Clubhouse at the end of the month. So if you want to be more in conversation around this, come join us in the Clubhouse for that. But now that we have a 10-minute disclaimered intro on this one, let me introduce you to today's guest, and then we'll dive right in. Mel Mitchell-Jackson is an adventure artist, writer, retreat guide, and craft tutor who compassionately supports people pursuing creative craft and breaking free from harmful tech tools. From 2009 to 2021, they lived in Kansas City and worked as an art writer, curator, community organizer, and fine artist. They founded and ran Informality blog, as well as the Subterranean Gallery, and have a deep background with artist-run spaces and media. From there, Mel became an art teacher at Apple, which took them from the Midwest to California. And in 2023, they quit their job to become an artist and guide that helps people heal their relationships to their art and to technology. I had Mel on the podcast a few weeks ago to talk about that journey from art school to Apple HQ to self-employment. And today we're specifically exploring their writing and thinking around AI sobriety. Mel's written some great pieces and made some wonderful YouTube videos about this, all of which will be linked in the show notes. Thanks so much to Mel for joining me a second time, and to you, dear listener, for tuning in. Let's dive into this conversation about AI sobriety. Hi, Mel. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Amelia. Excited to be here with you today.
Me too. So, what listeners don't know is that since our last conversation, you and I have been having this ongoing text thread about attention, about social media, about the books we're reading, and a lot about AI and our pretty strong feelings about it. Is this something you talk to all your friends about? I'm so curious.
It's really funny. I was hanging out with some friends in the city the other day. I live outside of San Francisco, but we were all in San Francisco. And every time I drive in, it is just billboard after billboard of AI, and you can't escape it anywhere you are in San Francisco. And so I was just full of vitriol and rage. And so everyone was like, wow, you really like talking about this. And I was like, yeah, I do. And so I'm glad that we can talk about it here together.
I too would not like AI billboards in my face over and over and over again.
Yeah, it feels like an invasive plant. It's everywhere, and you can't avoid it. As soon as I learned about how Spanish grass in California is the reason why wildfires are so severe, one of many reasons, in Spain, the colonizers brought cows to California, and then they were like, oh, the unintended consequence we have here with this is that now we have all this grass that's killing all the native plants. And so I feel that way about AI, it's that invasive plant that's all over.
Yes, AI as invasive plant definitely feels like an apt metaphor. So let's let that take us into this broader conversation about AI. Today, you are here to talk to us about your sort of theory and formulation of AI sobriety, which I'm really excited to talk about. And I thought that a nice way into this conversation might actually be just you sharing, and I can also share too, your experiences of using AI tools. What was your entry point with this? Are you someone who never used AI? Did you use it a lot? Are you a Chat GPT friend, foe, enemy? Give us some background on your personal use in these spaces.
Yeah. So I want to center this in the background that I was a person who was a tech literacy educator as well as a creativity educator at Apple for half a decade. And so that always gave me this ability to approach technology and any new tech with excitement and play and just saying, what can it do? Curiosity. How could I show other people in my life how this is helpful? And so that's the space in which I came to playing with ChatGPT. That's what I started with in 2023. It came out in 2022, of course, but it came to my consciousness right when I was leaving my job and right when I was starting my small business really foolishly. I read Part of the Artist's Way and Julia Cameron was like, leap and the net will appear. And I was like, there, permission. Foolishness.
It's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yeah, really, really foolish. And so at the time, I had a lot of luck with freelance illustration clients, a thing that ChatGPT was going to immediately start to chip away at, and a somewhat delusional business plan I made after buying a Notion template from an influencer. And so I was like, okay, I need to be good at my new job as a business owner. And so could this thing help me with my new job as a business owner? And I had no idea how to write effective copy yet. I worked in tech marketing for 6 months, but I was trapped by the fact that I used to be an art critic. I used to write art theory. I like to use words like mycelium when I'm talking about things, and that doesn't necessarily translate to effective copywriting if people aren't in the know in the plant world.
Yes, unless they love mushrooms, that may not land with them.
Right. And so I remember this dinner I had with my aunt and uncle, who are two former professors, and we're all sitting around and playing with ChatGPT on our phones and seeing if we could get it to write academic paper abstracts. And it was making us laugh and providing entertainment. And I was like, this is really interesting. I'm going to try to use this and see how it could help me. And I forgot that things that you're bad at, especially in your business, are opportunities for you to focus on getting better at the craft. So really focusing on how to learn the thing and be bad at it for a while. It was my first time being self-employed, and I felt like for the longest time, I had worked in jobs where there was like a training, an onboarding, a manual, all of these systems that help me feel comfortable in the new role. And being self-employed, there's none of that. You are on your own to figure it out. And this system, these apps, I used both ChatGPT and Claude, and both of them were offering me the opportunity to do the thing that I didn't know how to do. However, I would try things, and then I would be like, it's not very good. So I actually went through and asked myself, like, what things in my notes previously was I using this for? And I noticed that I was using it for like drafts of contracts, like law stuff I didn't know, understanding tax stuff I didn't know, like being like, look at this document, tell me what I need to know, because tax stuff is like written like D&D Dungeon Master manual with like all of these different spell slots, and I have to like roll like 3 dice to figure out exactly what part of the tax document to understand. And so I was like, okay, these things could be helpful for me. And the more that I used it, the more I was like, oh, well, what if I try to use it for this other thing in my life? So I started using it for managing my ADHD, to build optimized routines, to become a more productive and optimized little worker bee, because I wanted to be successful at my business. I don't want to fail. I was so afraid of failure that the seduction of these apps was perfectly apt. It was like, I will provide you the solution. I'll help you, assist you with getting the quick answers to these problems. But the thing that I found so scary is that it ended up taking over parts of my life that started to feel a little bit icky and a little bit too prying, if that makes sense. Like, I started using it to navigate personal conflicts in my life. And this is where I think that it gets really easily addictive to pull people into therapy or pull people into using it for all kinds of things. Like the Spanish language practice aspects of it, for me learning Spanish as a total beginner, super helpful. However, I was telling it things about my personal life and my family and my job and everything I do from that perspective. And so I started to ask myself, like, why am I using this? Kind of like I would like a mind-altering substance like alcohol or cannabis. I was just like, why am I using this? What is the point of me using this? Why do I want to use this? Because I'm queer, and in my community, there are rarely alcohol-free spaces that we can exist together. Most of the queer community, at least that I was really familiar with, gathered in bars and clubs, and a lot of my queer friends were sober from alcohol. And so I was like, this is starting to feel like a slippery substance. This is starting to feel like, because it's so general, it isn't just this thing that's helping me with my business. I'm getting into this weird space with it that feels manipulative. And then I started to read about people falling in love with their chatbots. And it can be so easily turned into something that's flirty, that's addictive. And I started to think about, wait a minute, I'm addicted to TikTok. I'm addicted to Instagram Reels. These things in my life that I was thinking about in 2024. This feels the same. It feels like this is designed to addict me and give me this promise of being able to solve problems to like move the needle on my business. But instead, the things that it was doing was outputting things that I like couldn't use. This doesn't sound like me. It doesn't feel like me. And then because I'm in the Bay Area, I have a lot of friends who use AI all the time. And they were like, oh, you just need to tell it more about who you are. And the more information you feed it about who you are and what you're doing and what your values are, then it'll help you write more sounding like you. And I'm like, fuck that. I am not going to train this thing that's owned by this giant company on more about who I am in order to get it to behave better. That sounds like planning my own death. Like, no, thank you. I've been working on the craft of writing since I was temporarily a double major in creative writing in college. And so, like, since 2010. And it felt really weird to have that suggestion of, oh, just train it to be more like you. I'm like, no, that's not good. And it was also leading me to like overwork and addiction. Like I talk about this in the AI sobriety piece that got us having this conversation. And I talk about how like my partner would go to bed and then I would be freaking out about not making enough money that month or like really struggling with like a bad product launch or something like that. Cause like I had no idea what I was doing in terms of running a business. And so I would like start asking the robot, like, how do I do something? And I was like, oh, this is really icky. I'm using this as a way to calm my anxieties. I'm using this as like thing that is training it on the fact that I struggle with anxiety and my mental health. I'm giving it information about my like health information, my health data, which should be private. And that is what started to lead me to questioning the use.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you wove together so many of the threads of what has made me feel weird about AI, what's frustrated me about the way people talk about it. So, some of the things I heard you say that I really appreciated was one, just that you were able to, in your own self-reflection and checking in with your like emotional embodied state, you could recognize that your use of ChatGPT felt like your use of TikTok. And you could sort of, even without needing to like, read a whole book about tech addiction or like have all this language around dopamine, you could just feel like this feels so similar. It feels the same. I am noticing this pattern again. And I think so often, especially when it comes to technology, we like don't trust how it makes us feel. This comes up all the time with people I talk to about leaving social media. Like they either haven't let themselves recognize that they feel like shit on these apps, or they know it, but they just like throw that feeling away because they're like, well, it shouldn't feel that bad, or I shouldn't feel this way, or like, why do I feel like we can trust our feelings? I think that's like a really important step in these processes. We can actually trust our inner knowing. We can trust what comes up for us as we are literally scrolling on these platforms. I think that is so important. And I love that that was kind of one of the seeds that you pointed to alongside the broader like ways that you were seeing these tools be used with the clients that you were working with and your own experience of how you're going to them, starting to notice that they were taking over both the professional spaces that you were entering and like the most personal, intimate parts of your life. And to me, that is a way that AI is actually quite noticeably different from a lot of social media use, is that so much of it happens in private. And of course, people are scrolling on their phones in bed and in the bathroom, but like they're looking at things that have been posted to some degree publicly. When you're using Claude or ChatGPT, it is just the conversation between you and this robot. Like there is no public record of that. We'd probably behave quite differently if like all of our ChatGPT logs were public, right? And I think that that is an important distinction.
Yeah, I was out on a walk with my partner when all of this was going on, and we had this phrase that we came up with, which was AI as a kill switch for your intuition. And that felt like a big yikes for me because I have always been a very intuitively led person, like someone who really likes to use the tarot and archetypes as places to root for direction in my life, like to connect to the spirit realm, to connect to ancestors. And so I felt like those things were becoming less and less important to me. And those were ways that I was self-regulating in a manner that was private and deeply personal and spiritual. And I didn't feel called or pulled to do that kind of stuff when I had this, private chatbot at my fingertips. And that started to really scare me. I'm like feeling the physical fear in my body again. It started to really worry me that there was just this thing that anyone could use and ask anything at any time at the same time that we're dealing with this epidemic of loneliness. And I'm like, this is so dangerous. This is so not good.
What that's really kind of pulling together for me is the way that these AI tools really cut out skill building by taking us straight from question to not only answer, right? Because we can like Google search something and get an answer, perhaps. And that's also AI created and motivated now. But like we can use a search engine to get an answer. But we also, with AI, we move from question to like final product without us actually having to do anything in between. So I'm drawing this parallel between like the skills you wanted for your business that AI was sort of shortcutting. And then also these skills that you're developing intuitively, like for your intuition, and AI is cutting that out as well. And like a lot is lost when we literally delete the process from our lives.
Yeah. And as craft tutor and creative educator, the entire thing that I focus on is process. Like process is so important. The failure is important. Like that was the thing that I was unwilling to let myself feel is like, I knew that I had a long runway, but I was so used to measurement in terms of like this month over last month in my previous jobs working in retail that I was like, I always comparing on this like quantitative scale. Like everything is like all about numbers and metrics and like late stage capitalist ways of viewing things versus doing things on a qualitative point of view and thinking long term and holistically, because it's so weird when we want to pull away from process, because the process is like where our like deep human parts come from. And I think, especially when it comes to creativity, the thing that I notice the most in my students is like this fear or past trauma on their creative practices of feeling unsafe in the ways in which they are navigating and moving through the world. And I think that that lack of safety is that we've taught people that creativity, and I felt this in art school all the time, that creativity is all about like product and grade, especially monetizing creativity and turning it into your business. It's all about product and sales. But really it's not. The thing that is at the deep root is that we have to build relationships both with our practices and with our communities in order to build something that's actually sustainable and isn't going to burn us out and put us in that same exact like hamster wheel of capitalist work and addiction to work. And I think that was the other thing that I was starting to notice is I've had all these conversations with my friends who have used the term addict or who have gone through AA or gone through other programs and worked really hard towards their sobriety. And I've like held with them through those experiences. And then as I was going through this, I was like, oh my God, I'm going through such a similar thing with my feelings about this, with my feelings about TikTok, whether it's TikTok or AI. Short form video and AI, I both think are like incredibly addictive. And then we get into this place where we're going to feel really empty and really lonely. And then what is that emptiness and loneliness going to be filled by? The chatbot. Because ads are coming. And so the part of it that makes me feel like the most scared is there was this horrible Amazon ad that my friend sent me because we all like to dogpile on AI together. It's like our little group chat. And it's like an Amazon ad where a guy's playing a video game and then he like uses his Amazon chatbot to order product to be delivered to someone he just beat in a game. And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what they want to do. They want to make it so that way we can tell them all of our problems in this really private manner and then use this to sell us more shit we don't need because consumerism is what props up the economy. And I'm just like, oh, this is so scary.
Yeah. I mean, it is really scary. I think that with the generative AI tools, particularly ChatGPT, we are so vulnerable to even deeper levels of behavioral manipulation than we saw on social media or have seen on social media. This is such a timely conversation too, because as we're recording this, like OpenAI has announced that they will be building ads into ChatGPT. It's here and coming. And Anthropic has responded by creating this Super Bowl commercial about how they're not putting ads in their tools or like no ads in Claude for now. And I think that, I have my own beefs with the ways that Anthropic tries to claim to be like a sort of human AI company. But to me, at the root of it all, like these are VC funded for-profit companies. They're following the same monetization pathways of sponsorship, advertising, and deep behavioral manipulation. So now that we've woven in so many aspects of like your personal background with generative AI tools and chatbots, your artistic background, your professional background, as well as like these senses of feeling, the addictive tendencies of these tools, of seeing like how they follow these like patterns. I want to ask you now about like this formulation of AI sobriety. So, what does AI sobriety mean to you?
What AI sobriety means to me from this like queer perspective, knowing all of these things about slippery substances, I recognized that the tech itself was genuinely causing harm to me. It was addicting people. And because of its general purpose nature, it seemed like a weird HR violation waiting to happen. Like so many people are like, it's just a tool, let it go. And I'm like, cool, my drill doesn't flirt with me. My drill doesn't follow me around my house and be like, hey, you want to use me for cooking? Hey, you want to use me for this other thing? Like, no.
Even my vibrator doesn't flirt with me or follow me around the house.
Exactly. And I think the thing that is so manipulative and dangerous about these tools is that they just want to be there for everything. They want to be like, hey, well, what if you just ask me? Just ask me a thing. Just ask me. And that feels really weird. And so I also started to read about the people behind some of the different organizations because I also switched from ChatGPT to Claude because I thought, oh, well, the Claude is the more ethical one. And then I started to learn about some of the people who work for Anthropic, and I started to learn about the concept of, what do they call it? They call themselves like effective altruists, who all think that they're building God and that they have to build the best God that won't harm them, the builders of, and I'm just like, they're like literally making a pseudo-tech religion based on a Harry Potter fan fiction. And I wish I was joking, but I am not. And so I started to go, okay, like what else is happening here? Like let's dig a little deeper. And then I read Empire of AI by Karen Howe. And I was like, oh, Anthropic is just a bunch of people from OpenAI that didn't like what OpenAI was doing anymore. And OpenAI's fundamental reason for being formed was because Elon Musk had a vision of a bad AGI that could kill all humans. And so they created this nonprofit to prevent this from happening. And so all of this like pseudo-religious belief of these people running these companies, some of the people, I don't think that all of them are this way, but of some of the people running these companies is based on like a conspiracy theory that is believed by Elon Musk and Sam Altman. And I'm just like, oh no, like we need to investigate further. And the further my investigation went, the ickier and ickier I felt. And I was just like, this is so scary that I was so easily convinced as a leftist, as a person who is deeply disgusted by the things that are happening in our country right now, that was so easily convinced to just like start giving my information, my ideas, my data away to these companies and trusting that it was all in exchange for the ability to run a small business successfully, right? Because the adage that everyone says is if you don't use it, someone else is going to use it and they're going to run their business better than you. And I think that just gets into this like weird insecurity bias. And it also is just plain wrong. Like there's so many different ways to run things and to do what small business work looks like. And I fundamentally don't agree that like we should sign away our voice to these people that otherwise we wouldn't want to associate our businesses with. Like, there's just like such a values misalignment. And that's why I was like, okay, I'm sober from that. I'm not messing with that anymore. I'm not touching it. I'm deleting my accounts. I'm not going to use this anymore. But I've already like done the damage, right? Like, I have to recognize that like I've already shared some things with these platforms. And so I wanted to create AI sobriety as a way to be like, hey, please don't do that. Like, please don't fall for it, because it's not going to help you. It's going to end up being something that creates a potential vital weakness in this moment where surveillance capitalism is how the fascists are like taking action. And that is really, really scary. Like, I was on a Discord server where somebody was talking about all of the ways that they're putting their astrology, their human design, their tarot readings into their ChatGPT. And I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, we're in a world of like Christian nationalism running the government. Why are you sharing this information with this thing? And also, that's just going to give you back confirmation bias. Because the other thing that I noticed about them is that they would see every idea as a good idea. And with community, you don't see every idea as a good idea. Your community checks you, it edits you, it helps you recognize what things work and what things don't. And if you're just in this constant state of, yeah, well, like, yeah, that's a great idea, you're never going to grow. You're just going to stay in like snake eating its own tail kind of loop with your own thoughts, and that isolation and pull away from like our actual creative intuitions is the part that, as a creative educator, scares me the most. It's like surveillance capitalism, top fear. Then underneath that, it's like the way in which people are killing their inner artists makes me deeply sad and wants me to convince other people to not use it at all, not touch it, because it's not worth it. The exchange is like when Ariel in The Little Mermaid signs away her voice to Ursula. It's like that to me. Like, at what cost? At what cost?
I think that like so much of what you're saying really resonates with my own journey with these tools and the way that I've changed my thinking about them. When ChatGPT came out, I definitely had some creative friends, writer friends, artist friends who were immediately like, fuck no, absolutely not. Literally what I do for a living is writing. I shall not be using this. And then after the news came out that Anthropic had just scraped LibGen and taken all of the books and fed it into their platform, I had more writer friends who were like, this tool literally stole from me. If you use it, I think you are stealing from me. There was a really great essay that I can link in the show notes that went around that said that. I think it was by Lily something. I'll find it and link it in the show notes. So I had friends who had that reaction. And then I had community members who were like, this is so great. It already does so much for me. It's saving me so much time. It's become my thought partner, or it does a first draft of things and then I resolve it and all of this. So like, I really felt like I spent 2024 and 2025 like surveying this spectrum of all of my creative business and artists, friends, and peers having very different reactions to this new-ish tool. And I wasn't sure where I was going to land, honestly. I didn't want to be the person who was out there being like, the internet is the end of us. I didn't want to be the person who was like, now that we can print books, that's the end of thought, right? Like, I was worried that I'd be like on the quote unquote wrong side of this, or that like I would just be the type of like person freaking out about a new technology that would integrate in a way that perhaps made sense for people. And so I just kept kind of like looking, listening, learning. And I did use the tools to a minor degree. Like, because of all my work around social media, there was no part of me that was ever going to tell ChatGPT my personal business. Like, not in a million years. But I did use it to like write some email subject lines last year. I did use it to like polish my show notes for clients sometimes. I still use it for AI transcription. I use a lot of AI transcription software, although I've much more carefully selected the ones that I'm using than I did in the past. But like, one of the biggest things that happened for me is similar to you. Like maybe I didn't have the personal experience of like, this feels bad. But once I started reading the books about how these companies formed and were run, then I was just like, oh, absolutely not. So I have read some of Empire of AI, but the book that I really loved on this was Supremacy by Parmi Olson. That book traces the sort of dual rise of DeepMind, which has now been purchased and integrated into Google, and OpenAI, and then also the splintering, like the creation of Anthropic when I think it was like 7 OpenAI employees left. And when I learned like the founding ethos of these companies, the ways that they were created, the types of people who run them, that is when the full like surveillance capitalism picture came into play for me. And I felt this like, absolutely fuck no. And I think that kind of lands me in this place with AI sobriety where I'm kind of like, well, I'm actually not really sober from anything. I drink alcohol. Sobriety is not a part of my practice, but I feel an extremely strong fuck no to generative AI tools specifically that made me so interested in this concept and this practice. So I'm curious, how do you actually like do AI sobriety? Because something that always comes up for me here is the way that AI is integrated into so many tools. It feels like if you truly don't want to touch AI, you like can't use the internet anymore. So I'm curious if you like make distinctions or like how do you think about those nuances?
I think that AI, as someone who has been deeply studying marketing copy for the last 3 years, AI is a marketing tool. AI is a term that has been around for almost a century. It goes back way, 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 way back to like a computer program that was called Eliza. That was like the first chatbot. And I think that the way that AI is used is it's part of the like overall hype machine, keeping the current US stock market hanging on by a thread. Who knows where that will be at by the time this is published? But the notion that every company needs to adopt AI has led a lot of companies, like, for example, Adobe. I've used Photoshop since I was 8. I have been a little techie kid for forever. And so I always really loved I had like a photo retouching job for a while, and I would always use content aware fill. Now, Adobe calls that AI fill. That is machine learning. So for me, I think there's a genuine distinction between machine learning tools that are private on device and things that are AI that are attached to the surveillance state capitalism idea, like large language models, generative tools, things of that nature. And I think that there are good generative tools out there. Like Brian Eno is a really great example of an artist who builds his own generative tools to make music that are not tied to any of these LLMs or any of these other things. He owns the means of production. I think that my low-key Marxism is coming out here. Like, we don't own the means of production with LLMs. And so I think that with on-device machine learning, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, I still use voice memos on my phone for journaling when I'm like sitting out on the trail. And I find it so helpful. And I did some research. I'm like, shit, well, Apple Intelligence, I have an iPhone. Apple Intelligence is like integrated into OpenAI. I hope it's not putting all of my voice memos transcripts into ChatGPT. And it's not. It's doing that on the device because for years we've had text to speech. For years, we've had tools like VoiceOver that helps people who don't have sight or are low vision be able to actually read everything on their screen. And so there are tools that have been rebranded as AI that I'm okay with. The thing that I say in my essay is that my sobriety from AI specifically relates to large language models called LLMs, like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. I also have an AI policy on my website, which has become like my number one part of my website that people go to now. And the AI policy gets into how I don't use generative features, but I still use recommendation algorithms, which every single app wants to call AI. I still use dictation. I still use some things that are known as AI, but for like mind mapping and figuring out my idea generation, I'm old school and I do it in Obsidian and it's manual and it takes a fuckload of work. But I like the work of doing that gardening because it helps me come up with the ideas that need to float to the top at the right moments and allows me to allow things to go fallow. And I think with AI assistance, it can just feel like so much all at once. Like Notion baked in an AI assistant into it, and I love Notion. And I was like, no, I hate this. Now I have to stop using Notion. And one of my former students, her daughter works at Notion, and I happen to get coffee with her, and I'm like, I don't like this. She goes, email their support team and ask them to turn it off. I was like, turn it off? I can email them and ask them to turn it off? So I did that, and now it's gone. And I love Notion again. And so I think this gets into the point of the fact that I think AI sobriety is going to look different for a lot of different people. I think sobriety in general is on a spectrum. A lot of people have different thoughts about it. Like I have a friend who doesn't do alcohol and also doesn't do short form video. And we've had whole conversations about how he started craving TikTok in the same way that he would crave a beer. And so that started to feel like really interesting space to explore. And like my conversations with him influenced me to stop posting at all on short form platforms. And so that's the way that I really think about AI sobriety, is that you have to create your guardrails. Like I do consider myself a Luddite, but that's more in alignment with like Brian Merchant's writings and the idea of unions and labor solidarity as the way to defeat fascism. And if we're aligning ourselves with Luddites, I think that's good. Like I don't, there's a data center that they want to build near me. And so my friends and I are like, how can we protest this? How can we make sure this doesn't happen? And so thinking about that aspect is the way that I think about AI.
Yeah, I really like where you started and ended that, because I think it's so important to sort of demystify some of these terms. And I completely agree with you that like AI is such a buzzword and such a like money grab in the VC space right now that everyone wants to call everything they're doing AI. And I would agree that I think it's like these certain types of large language models owned by these big companies who are invested in surveilling us. That is like what I have the biggest problem with. So I've started referring to what I'm doing as like GPT sobriety. Like I don't use any of the generative tools and I don't use any of the chat bots. Other things I'm open to learning about, but like I am not interested in engaging with ChatGPT, with Claude, with any of these various chatbots now through the apps or other things that you can get. But I think that this type of specificity is helpful and useful, even just learning about the different types of tools. And as I mentioned before, like I use a lot of AI transcription in my business, both as a podcast producer and like, you know, I run a membership with a lot of live calls and I want to provide transcripts for accessibility reasons and all of these things. But as I was going through this, what I started looking into was like, oh, the transcription tool I've been using has a pretty close relationship. I think they just use ChatGPT on the back end to do things. But I was able to find a very affordable on-device transcription tool that's privacy-focused. It's for lawyers and journalists. It's called WhisperScript. And so now I just run all my transcripts on device. They don't actually go to these major servers. You know, I think that it is much easier than we might believe to find alternate options. That's been a big thing for me, is like with what feels like the sudden ubiquity of AI, I had this sort of false idea that like those are my only choices. And then when I started looking into it, I was like, that is not even close to true, actually. There's so many different options here. And I think that was really useful for me to just think about, you know, what is really important to me? What are the distinctions between these types of tools? What am I willing to do or not do? This goes back to like, again, the reasons for leaving social media. Like, I think some people have very like personal felt reasons. Some people have very political reasons. And that's kind of where you ended. Like your thoughts on being AI sober is like, it's not just about your personal relationship with an app or no app then. It's also about like the labor politics, the environment, the climate of it all, the like way that you want to see the means of production shift, who owns them, how do they work, especially on these tools where they have literally like been proven to have stolen all of our creative and intellectual labor to create them. And so I really like how you're thinking both in terms of like personal use and in terms of political action.
Thanks. I think if we orient ourselves in terms of political action with these, also thinking about the fact that the models are not just trained on all of our data, but they are also weighted. So there's a term in it that each time that a model performs something, the trainers of the models will say, hey, I didn't like that output, or I liked that output. And so those trainings are biased to be aligned with empire. So if you're trying to run a business that is like leftist oriented, that is focused on solidarity, that is focused on trying to build something beyond techno-feudalism, the outputs you get from these generative tools will always be aligned with their training data. And I would love for some company to be like, hey, I'm going to make this software. It's $300. You can put in all of your own data, keep it private on your own system, and use it, and it will never be shared. Like, give me that. I would try that because that is not aligned with empire. I get to train that. I get to own the means of production within that. Yes, that would be expensive, but I think that what we need are tools that allow us to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And yes, I'm going to pay the software engineers the labor to make something like this possible. But I also am not going to give in to like hype in exchange for my voice, my work, my intuitive self.
I think part of what resonates so much for me and your work is that we have this shared like love of tech and love of creativity. And I think I could probably say like hatred of capitalist overlords who control that through these colonial extractive methods. And I think that there are so many problems with AI, and we've named so many of them here today, right? The addictive tendencies, the fact that the training data has largely been stolen and it aligns with empire, as you're saying, the way that they're placing ads in these tools, which are only going to deepen the behavioral manipulation of social media. And then something else that I think is a sort of like another layer of this problem that I've been thinking about, which I first sort of heard formulated by Meredith Whittaker, who's like the president of Signal, the chat messaging app, is the way that they are truly trying to integrate so many aspects of our lives, like agentic AI, which is not a phrase I think we've used yet this conversation, that is trying to be the types of tools that like read your calendar app and call your doctor for you to make an appointment when they know that you'll be free and they have all your healthcare info. Like one of her big things with agentic AI is like it is going to require access to every part of our life. So it won't just be like, what are you telling ChatGPT, but it'll be like you have now given it access in all of these areas. And so I guess I share that to say that like it's yet another thing that worries me. And also I am not interested in agentic AI.
Agentic AI, the only reason that I started to know the term agentic is because of how many times I drive into San Francisco on I-80. And as soon as I turn onto the 101, every billboard is talking to me about Salesforce and AI agents and Agentforce and all of these things that I'm just sitting there from a labor rights perspective and going like, cool, so you want to replace humans. So what's your plan for after you replace the humans? Like, that's always my question. I'm like, if you're hoarding all of this wealth, like, is OpenAI going to be the one to bring about, they're going to redistribute all of their money? NVIDIA and OpenAI is going to create a UBI system in the United States? Because I don't see that happening. And I think there's going to be a huge working class movement as people start losing their jobs of people who do not like this. And I think that's where the Luddite thing, like the actual true meaning of the Luddites, is they were machine breakers. They were skilled workers, now unemployed and starving, who went in to break the machines. And I think that there will be people who are furious at what these things are trying to do. And it's just, we think that it seems harmless, but we don't really think about, I think so often it's so easy for the tech culture in Silicon Valley, in the Bay, to be like, we created this new innovative product, and then everyone rushes to use it, and they don't think about, wait, what about our privacy. Like, my family all did 23andMe years ago. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And they were like, why aren't you doing it? I'm like, someday that company is going to go belly up and they're going to sell all of that data on your health to the highest bidder. And that's exactly what happened. And I have always been extremely privacy focused and extremely skeptical of capitalism and the way that it wants to like get its little tendrils. And I think I watched The Matrix too many times growing up, but it was like it wants to get its little tendrils in you and just like suck out everything that it can. And as an artist, I'm always just like, nah, I like my brain. I already have human intelligence in here. That's so good. I like this. I want to protect this and use that and not use any of this stuff, because I think it's like organic farming, right? I think that people who don't use AI can think of themselves more like an organic farmer, as somebody who's providing that quality from the perspective of a human, not from the perspective of an agent force.
Yeah, and in like deep relationship with the natural world, not in a pure extractive transactional relationship with the land that you're monocropping. Hello, my lovely listener. Amelia here, interrupting this amazing conversation because if you're enjoying this episode, the one you're listening to right now, I think you would really love the Off the Grid Clubhouse. The Clubhouse is a paid podcast, newsletter, and asynchronous community space for friends and fans of Off the Grid, hosted on Substack. It's where I share bonus episodes about my hot takes, personal feelings, deepest, darkest, brightest, lightest ideas about online business, and more. I also send out a monthly link roundup called The Click-Through, where I gather everything that I have been reading, watching, and intrigued by with regards to internet culture, social media happenings, and online business at large. That's also where I have been chronicling the many, many, many announcements I see lately of people taking breaks from social media or exiting platforms entirely. And all of the posts in the Clubhouse have community comment threads where you can ask me questions, share your experiences, and chat with other Off the Grid listeners. It only costs $5 per month or $50 per year to join the fun, and I truly hope that you will head to the show notes and check it out. I look forward to seeing you on Substack, but for now, let's dive back into this conversation. You know, something that my partner JJ and I talk about in the context of me trying to figure out my own AI use is this sort of objection that I hear sometimes that's like, yeah, I hear all of that, but AI makes things so much more accessible for me. AI makes it possible for me to do these things that I couldn't do otherwise. And something that JJ is always saying to me is like, if AI is required, it's not accessibility, which is something I really had to sit with and be like, do I think that? But I'm curious, Mel, if you hear these objections, like, do people say this to you, or how do you think through it?
So I want to frame this from the perspective of someone with a quilt of disabilities. I am a disabled person. And when I hear AI be defended from a disability perspective, it makes me deeply angry. Because I always see it used, especially on Substack, of like, I can't afford to hire an artist to draw my thumbnails or to make my images. So I just have to do this because I don't have the skill. And what we're doing when we're making those arguments and normalizing those arguments is we are devaluing the labor of the people who have built the skill. This is getting kind of back to what I was saying earlier about how I didn't want to think about how copywriting and running a business are crafts that I have to learn over time, that I need to get good at. And I think that we want everything to be fast and we want it to be good enough. And that to me is a problem. But getting back to the accessibility issue, I have seen people say, well, AI music makes music accessible for people who can't play instruments. And I'm like, you're not disabled because you haven't worked on a skill. If you are a disabled person that is using a machine learning algorithm like VoiceOver on your phone to read your screen to you, that is technically could be considered AI, right? But in that machine learning, not extractive, not GPT generative space. I have not seen a truly good argument for generative AI as an assistive technology to disabled people that doesn't simultaneously cause them harm, because the pandemic has taught me that disabled people are not a priority for any government in the United States currently, and they will always be tossed to the side. We will always be tossed to the side in a way that is so flagrant and makes me so full of contempt. And yeah, it makes me so dysregulated just thinking about it. I gotta whew, shake off.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I really appreciate everything that you said. And obviously, I agree with it. And I think a lot of the sort of slippery places that I've seen this come up are often in conversations around like neurodivergence and the ability to either produce at a level that's expected of people at their jobs that is in and of itself often disabling, or ease these sort of interpersonal interactions in a way that can be really challenging to figure out without extensive practice with other people. I think what it's always come back to for me is that if we are turning to a chatbot, we are removing another person from the conversation. I think that we can all use these layers of who is being exploited in this process. Sometimes it's us, sometimes it's other people, even for something we might call accessibility. And so I think the thing that really stood out to me that you said is you haven't seen an argument for this, a use of this that isn't also just harming the same people it is supposedly helping. And that's what I come back to.
Because I saw this person on TikTok who had created this mini app that used ChatGPT that was supposed to be for folks like me with ADHD to put in the things that we were doing and then use it to set priorities in our day. And that was one of the things that I tried. But then I was like, wait, do I want to be sharing data about my own personal struggles with ADHD with this unregulated company? This is where I get into yes, it could technically help someone with a disability. At the same time extracting their data and sending that up to Palantir and government surveillance. I don't want my disabled comrades, especially because so many of us are low income, to be taking the route of oh, well, I'm going to use this free tool to help me make an accommodation. But then on the flip side, now I have given all of this information about my accommodations to this giant corporation. I am all for advocating for accommodations at work. I am all for advocating for therapy. Yet I recognize that a lot of workplaces may or may not know how to provide them. And a lot of times people can't access therapy. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have deep rooting communities. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't investigate, can I go to my local university's therapist and training program and get a session for $20? Because that's what I did for many years. What disabled people need is mutual aid and care from community, from real people, not solutions oriented we're just going to sell you this technology as the way to help you while also surveilling you. I don't think that that's a fair exchange. I think that that's an exchange that could have really, really scary effects, especially considering my own family's personal history as Poles who left Poland less than a century ago. And everything that I am seeing happening, I am this is really scary.
I'm so grateful for the clarity of your perspective and the thoughtfulness of it, that you have a clear point of view and you live that out in all of these spheres of your life. I find that there are plenty of people out there who are talking about not using AI, but when it comes to how they actually make money, I'm thinking here, I'll call them out. So Matthew McConaughey getting all this press for suing companies for using his stuff in AI when he is a Salesforce rep who sells AI all the time, or he does commercials for Salesforce AI. I'm also thinking of, one of the big voices in this is Ed Zitron, and he works with AI clients, and his PR company Wired did a big expose on that. And I'm sort of I'm not here for that anymore. I'm here for the people who are living it out, who are deeply invested in mutual aid, and I know we often feel like we don't perhaps have a lot of power in the face of all of this dominance and supremacy and violence. But I hope that we can, like through conversations like this, like find each other and build coalitions.
And I also recognize that my passion could activate shame for folks. And I don't want to activate shame. I want to invite you to just investigate what it would look like to slowly tend what it would be to use this stuff less and focus on savoring process over product, because that's like the main thing that I try to teach and focus on in my own work and in the retreats I lead and in all of the things that I'm doing, is that it's really just about like sitting with our discomfort with something once we know the truth.
And I think one of the things you do so beautifully that I had intended to wrap into this conversation, but we'll just kind of like, I'll give you a moment here to reference at the end, like, is teach people how to do that through the creative process and through like particularly your blend of adventure art, moving into the natural world, creating art there. And so I'm curious as we finish, if you want to just speak to how maybe like creativity is an antidote to a lot of this anxiety for you, or the ways you see adventure art being, you know, a possibility as how we can re-engage the world and our lives in a different way.
Yeah. So I came to adventure art as a way of making art again after I quit. So I was evicted from my studio in 2019 and then pretty much gave up on making art while I was working for Apple. And it wasn't until I started hiking again and taking a lot of photos at the time just with my phone and later a physical camera that I was like, there's so much beauty around me. And there's so much beauty that I want to see and witness and savor and really just sit with. And so I started thinking, okay, I want to teach how to witness. I want to teach how to find this beauty. I read Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, and I was just like, oh, yeah, this is in deep alignment. I am a huge fan of Adrienne Marie Brown and a big student of their work. And I'm like, okay, I need to start thinking about how time in nature is a way to get us back to creativity. Like all of my best writing happens when I am sitting at the same bench and just looking. I made a class last year called The Hiker's Way, and I recognize that hiking isn't necessarily everybody's preferred practice or often seen as the most accessible for people. But I think that what being out in nature did for me is that it helped me to reorient my entire life. After I was diagnosed with long COVID, I realized that walking incredibly slowly in nature was the only activity I could do. And so I was both savoring the beauty around me, and I was also in this deep process of trying to heal my own body and mind from this horrible virus. And that was informing me of the recognition that there are so many people out there who have had negative experiences around creativity, who have had experiences that have led them to view their art through only productivity or view their art only through layers of self-criticism that they've inherited from past parts of their life. And so I was like, I need to make something that's the antidote to these things. And in a way, all of the work that I do is what I feel is the antidote to AI hyper-reliance, is that we can be in this space where we can recognize, okay, I'm going to choose AI sobriety. I'm going to choose GPT sobriety, as you mentioned. So what am I going to do in order to work on those creative and things that I'm doing, those crafts, in a manner that is supportive to me? And I think that that is where we can move with adventure art. I really liked how our conversation via text was talking about cognitive onloading, because I think my attitudes around AI are so similar to your attitudes around social media, in that our phones can be cognitive quicksand. They can be places that just drag us down into the depths and be this space where we can realize that we're in this like weird world where we think that this one device can do everything. And I used to believe that this one device could do everything. But every time I have a great idea for something that I want to share with the world as a writer, I open up my phone and I try to go to the Notes app. And because my brain is so wired to immediately open messaging, Signal, Substack, Discord, some place for me to get lost in my phone, I will often automatically go and open the thing and not end up in the place of creativity, and then I lost the thought. And so figuring out ways to help people restructure their lives in a way where they can savor creativity and root into nature as the place for them to just wander, meander, look at stuff, and allow their intuition to come forward. Because the longer you spend outside in nature, the more that you're looking at the beauty around you, whether that's a snow-covered landscape or a beach, those moments are where you can hear yourself think. And I think that's the thing that we're getting away from the most with these generative programs. We're getting away from our ability to think and to come up with those ideas. And that is where we can really guide the vision of the future. Because if we're not allowing ourselves to imagine and embody the worlds that we want to build after this, then we're not going to be supporting ourselves. We need to support ourselves and our work. And so that's what I do in all of my work, is helping people get back outside, get back in tune with their real intentions of their creative practice, and feel into their real intuitions once again, instead of offloading everything to AI or to what other people are saying on social media that they then believe are their own thoughts.
What a beautiful place to wrap up this conversation, this invitation to go outside. Maybe you listen to this while you're outside. Maybe some of you are currently walking around hearing this and looking at the world. And yeah, I just feel so much affinity and like kinship between our work. You're talking about AI and art, and I'm talking about social media and small business as these like modes of tech domination that we can break up with and resist through these other means of, reconnecting with the world and ourselves, or for me, like reimagining employment and our relationship to money. And I think that there's just so much to discuss here. And I look forward to hopefully more conversations between us. Mel, is there anything else that you wanted to share with folks today? Please do, if so. And if not, I'd also love if you could tell them where they can connect with you and get the Hiker's Way and the rest of your work.
So I want to say, if you're resonating with the things that I'm saying, especially the things I just said, I know that Amelia will put the Hiker's Way page on my website in the link in the magical show notes. Definitely go explore there. I have my own core principles of the Hiker's Way. That's basically like the manifesto for what we're doing. And it will guide you more through what my work looks like, what it means to work with me. I also have opened my books to start doing creative retreats again, so custom creative retreats. So if you're realizing, I need some help breaking free from big tech, I need some assistance with trading passive consumption and phone traps for a practice that actually sustains your well-being, then I would love to work with you. So definitely explore my website and maybe sign up for a class. I'm running my business democratically this year, so all of my live classes, everything that I want to teach is on one page, and then what I teach next is based on what has the most people on the wait list. So you can essentially vote for what to take with me next. And I should be teaching a sketchbooking class coming up very soon. So hopefully you can join me for that or one of my upcoming classes.
Oh, so cool. What a cool way to plan your class schedule. I love all of that. As you said, it will all be linked in the show notes. So thank you, Mel, so much for joining me again for our second conversation. Thank you, listeners, for being here and for spending this time with us. There will be more AI conversations coming up. And until next time, we will see you off the grid.
I kinda hate social media, feeds on my brain like a bacteria. If you read my Wikipedia, it'll say I kinda hate social media. Post a picture of myself, sacrifice my mental health, use your product time to sell. I would rather go to hell. Do you like this?
That was an abridged version of Social Media by Surfer Boy and Rectangle. To hear the entire song, find Surfer Boy on Spotify or head to the link in the show notes. Thanks so much to them for sharing the song with us, as well as to Melissa Caitlin Carter, who sings our theme song that you hear at the start of every show. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you will download the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. Until next time, I will see you off the grid.